and it is another lovely morning, another Sunday, and another sprint day. I will be working on Into the Woods, which is the first book of the Young Lightbearer series, and today I'm going to be working in Violet's point of view. I don't aim to get every chapter that's in David's point of view, who is the main character, redone in Violet's point of view. If you don't know, they are also the main characters of my web novel Late Night Blossoms, but this one is not the same vibes at all. I mean, similar vibes. They're both dealing with spiritual gifts, but the difference is this one's a kid series and Late Night Blossoms is far from it. I write clean, or at least try to be mostly clean. Definitely completely clean for Late Night Blossoms because it's not a romance story in the first place. But it does deal with spiritual things. It's kind of like a slight Christian horror, mild, but more so just dealing with Christians in a haunted house type deal and dealing with trauma of the past, both their past and the past of the house, kind of dabbling with it. I'm trying not to keep it very spooky, but there is some elements to it. But with Into the Woods in the Young Lightbearer series, it is not the same thing by far. It's aimed at kids, more so like elementary, middle school type age. So I'm trying to pull way back on the spiritual aspect as far as in keeping it like it's a different vibe than my adult series, purposely so, because I want to have it child friendly, kid appropriate, but it does deal with the same characters. The only difference is this is in 2012 timeline, so they're younger. The main character David is about 9, I want to say, and his older sister is about 10 or 11. So even though the other one does deal with a more evenly split POV, or I guess more onto her side, this one's going to be more so onto David's side, and it's just going to be chapters that do have her in it will be reflected in her point of view. I'm wanting to say I have a good idea of some of them that I think would be beneficial, but it's not going to be more an even split, but it is going to have like more point of views that I'm working on today. That will be Violet's side of the story that I think will be a fun addition, and we will see how it goes. I will show you the word count that I have, and we will progress from there, and I will do a check-in right before I start. And it is time. I'm going to go ahead and start. The idea that I have is I'm going to go ahead, I already said I'm doing Violet's point of view, but instead of doing, I'm mostly probably going to do it bouncing off of David's point of view. So every time there's a chapter to where she is basically leaving the scene, those are probably the chapters I'm going to be working on. Maybe there'll be occasions to where I will have her as an additional perspective of the scene, but for the most part, my thought is, like, as far as in, we're going to start out with, the book starts with David already being in the woods waiting on his sister, so I'm going to start with Violet going into the woods, like as far as in her point of view before, into, and then there's a couple plot points that I have an idea of getting her expansion of the scene, as far as in she does leave a couple times or disconnects from David a couple times of the scene. So I think those ones will be the ones I focus on. My goal is the 4 chapters I'm going to work on, or since this is different and it's not different point of views, it's just one point of view. My goal is to get Violet's point of view going into the woods with her brother. There's a scene where they fight, so I mean there's not a whole bunch of spoilers, it's a kid book, but even then I guess I will try not to spoil too much. We'll aim at that, but I feel like this one isn't necessarily too much of a spoiler book, like not to spoil, but Into the Woods, that's why you have the name of the title of the first book, that her going into the woods, I guess her go from the house to the woods, then there's a fight, so have her like going away from the fight, maybe shortly before that too, as far as David gets like a feeling of something, and she's continuing on, so maybe have that perspective, that being the second chapter, and then their fight, the second chapter or third chapter, and then them coming home, and then I will try to get to at least them going to church. I might have to wrap her point of views up in January because I'm recording this in December. I might have to wrap it up at the final sprint in January. That's my goal, is to have one of these books done every year between my second, or like at the end of the year into the first, between my second sabbatical of the year of that year and the first of the following. So basically between September and January is my goal of getting one of these books done every year. Since they are relatively short, relatively simple, I will try to have like a rough plan during the year, and then at the end of the year, every sprint of that next 5 months is going to try to be for this. So that is the goal for today. I will give you a gist or a little sneak peek of the first chapter. That way you have an understanding of where I'm coming from for Violet's point of view. I think it'll be a fun book, and I can't wait for it to be done. I have a lot of plans for it. I definitely want to get some illustrations done for it, and a little map, because they have a little kids map, so I'm excited for it. It won't be like fantasy, but maybe I can give, it's kind of, because it's kids and their imaginations, I'm going to lean more into the fantasy type vibe of not as much spiritual fantasy, even though it is still a spiritual fantasy, because we deal with the spiritual realm, but from a kid's perspective. Definitely I think it's fun with the kids book having it lean into the fantasy, but because it's of dreams and their imagination fantasy, and not necessarily it being a fanatical type world or fantasy type world. So we will see, and let's go ahead and get started for the first writing block, and then I will check in before lunch. And it is lunchtime, after lunchtime. It is a late lunchtime, like super late. But I got 3 chapters done, 14 pages. Now, they aren't the same 14 kind of pages as my older audience books, because it's formatted to be more kid-friendly, so not as many words on a page. But we did get 2,286 pages. Nope, 2,286 words. And I did get the chapters up to the point that I want to get. I do want to get a couple more at least. Hopefully all of Violet's, because it's relatively short chapters. Again, because it's a kid book. I guess I shouldn't have to emphasize that as much. I don't know. I just like to remind myself, and I guess like, because I don't always do writing blogs on just the kids books, just this time is, so there's going to be a fluctuation difference of the word count, page count, and as many words on a page type deal, and how big the chapters are type deal. But I did get to the point that I was wanting to get, but here, chapter I'm about to get into, I'm not entirely sure if I'm wanting to backtrack. I'm leaning on probably not, because of the story being in Violet's point of view. I think it would be beneficial to kind of show how the difference of how the struggle that David's having, that she is noticing it, but because he has something in the center of it, since it is like a big plot point of the book, of his struggle with something, we'll just leave it at that, it's more prone that he's going to have his focus on. So I think it would be beneficial to show her kind of skip over some parts that are more important to him, and kind of show how that's not really on her mind. I am trying to think of where I should have her story be. She is a gamer, and so I have her kind of like her attention being on a game she's working on. And so I'm trying to loop around and see if I can find a way naturally to loop that into some kind of mini story arc for her. They're not going to be like major story arcs, they're miniature story arcs, but especially with her point of view not being as many chapters, I'm thinking about maybe trying to bring it into some kind of biblical or character type of growth, even if it's small, or some kind of just like aha type thing. I don't know. Like, for example, with David's story arc in this, I have it to where when he goes to church, it kind of helps him with what he's struggling with. And so I want to kind of lean into something similar with Violet, but because she's not like into church as much, she's a more goes to church but isn't really like, as far as in getting out of it as much as like, because she's not saved, but trying to show like just a normal kind of kid going to church but not really like attaching to a whole bunch of it besides like surface level things. So her growth, or her whatever happens in this book, isn't going to be from the church as much as David's would, because David's more so like loves church, loves his Bible, loves God, loves all of that, and so he's going to get more out of that. That's why he's the main character of Young Light series, kind of showing a child's faith growth. But with his sister, it's different. It's trying to show like what could be her story arc in this. So I'm trying to figure it out. I keep going back to the game. I think it has to be something with that. So I'm going to try to figure out something that it could be teaching her something. The most I could think of is maybe it teaches her to, oh, I think I just got it. Because she references how she's trying to get out of a level, trying to get past a level. And I think what I could do is use it to where it teaches her that she has to look for things that might not be so easily seen. I think that could be it. Now I just have to figure out how to implement that. But let me get into it. I'm going to eat, I'm going to write, we're going to get into this, and it's definitely a little bit of a chilly day. It's a sunny day, but definitely drop in temperature, and it's cold, so nice and snuggle and warm. So is the perfect weather to kind of get in some writing. So until the next check-in. And it is the end of the night. went ahead and just called it quits at about 5:30 because I'm just like, I could push for another chapter, but I'd rather not. There's about 6 chapters I want to say left that need to be done, so they should be able to be done without too much problem. I will just go ahead and try my best to wrap it up next time. There's only one that needs to be done in David's. It's basically the next morning after everything, because everything takes place in a day, of just kind of like a farewell chapter type deal. Not like farewell, but as far as in it's the end of the book, let's see what the next day is and how like things are. Okay, kind of like a end of an episode, restart the deal kind of way, but actually having its story canon of why it starts off clean slate type deal. Because every one of these books I'm going to try to have just like, I guess, a small problem and then have it like solved. I mean, that is where a lot of kids books come into play, of problem, solve it, but trying to show that the problem solved and we're just wrapping things up type deal. But there should be 5 more chapters left of Violet. I did get, 5 chapters done today. It was 21 pages, 3,662 words of just today's progress. I showed you what the total book is so far of word count. So yeah, it's definitely longer than I was expecting it to be. As far as in starting it, it was only going to be aimed to be about 40 or so pages. Definitely ended up being longer than that. By far, almost double that, but I mean, that is to be presumed when you add a second point of view, but even then before that, it was definitely longer. I even did get a fun idea for Violet's, definitely leaning, like how David is going to be leaning into dreams and imagination. I'm going to lean into gameplay for Violet, showing a little bit of that kind of aspect of it, of what I showed you was just like in her game, and teach her, like I said, lessons through that. I think would be fun. And I was trying to think of, okay, what game is she playing, like as far as in making up a game, and I was like, you know what, I could tie in some story elements here as well, have it subtly there. And there's definitely going to be elements there that try to explain what's going on in the actual story to like a audience that's actually wanting to dig into it. Unlikely to be the kids, because I mean, I'm trying to make it kid friendly. But I do want to eventually, I think would be a fun idea, is taking the journal that she found and writing a short story, because the journal, I didn't feel comfortable actually writing what the journal is, like what is explained in it, because it's going to be the events of surrounding things type deal, and I just didn't feel like that was kid friendly. Extremely, like, finding the journal, okay, kid friendly, but what's in the journal, we're gonna leave that to a more mature audience and not have it in the books. But I do think I'm going to, for one, I've said it before, I don't know if I said it in the last vlog, I might have, but I do aim to write a parallel story to this, probably closer to a novella or short story, to where it will be every book is going to have an adult perspective, so you get more clear context, or at least dive into the nit and gritty at more of a mature level, having adult point of views. This one's definitely going to be from his mother's point of view, but I am leaning towards, okay, I had an idea that I could do that I won't get into yet, but I do want to maybe write a short story revolving around at least some entries of the journal that kind of explains some things that go on in this book. Because, like I said, it's supposed to be child-friendly, spiritual warfare type deal, but I want to also, like, I had to think about what is going on, but try to mature down. But I think it would be fun to dig into it in a way that's not necessarily child friendly, but because it is going to be for a more mature audience of a short story, where most of my short stories lie, and I'm excited for it. So I might have to go ahead and do that this coming year. That'd be fun. But yeah, that's what we have so far, and I'm excited. Like I said, one more writing sprint. and this book should be wrapped up for the rough draft. I think that'd be fun, and I am getting into more of Violet's kind of vibe, trying to differentiate the different kind of vibes. I think that'd be fun. It's definitely a little bit of a different vibe than David's. I like to do that with each one of my characters, try to give them their own kind of vibe because they're going to have different personalities from each other. I think that's the best kind of writing, of showing different characters and their different personalities, but also having fun with showing how that personality comes out in the text type deal. Sometimes that changes the story vibe entirely, and sometimes it just changes the writing style slightly. That's always fun, and that's always what I try to aim for, making each character their own individual and making them, no matter what story they are, actually come through the text, even if it's Wicked story. And I tried my best to do that with both point of views. And yeah, also noticed that there were some things that I was picking up on unintentionally that were getting written into here that do definitely represent Violet's personality later down the line. So I did notice after writing that I'm like, that definitely does tie in well with her story. So that is also fun, digging into the background and paralleling her direction or any of the characters' direction to their later character when you already have that written. But that is it for this. That is it for the night. And that is it for me. I pray blessings upon you all. I bid you adieu. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whenever it is for you. It is evening for me, but looks like night. So good night to you. Goodbye.